Okay, we are talking about the power of habit, and this is section 1. So, discuss the methods of habit formation in individuals. So, habit formation is something that you do instinctively after several repetitions. So, there's actually a process to it. It is the cue, the routine, and the reward. So, the cue is like the trigger that tells your brain that you're going to go into the habit. And the routine is something that follows the cue. It's what you do every time that you're cued. And the reward is what you receive from doing the habit. And you have to have a reward in order for it to be a habit because that makes it stick, so you'll repeat it. So in the book, they talk about chunking, and that is performed in the basal ganglia. And that is your brain saying that, okay, from this trigger, I know what follows it because I've done it several times, and so I don't need to think through every individual step of it. So it's the brain's way of conserving energy. So something that I was really thinking about whenever we were talking about chunking in the book, such as like backing your car out of the driveway, it's something you know how to do, you can do it and not even think about it, is the nursing assessment. When I first became a nurse, I would come home exhausted because I felt like I'd used my total brain power for the day. I had to think through critically everything that I did for the entire day. Whereas now I feel like I'm not so mentally exhausted because I know what I'm doing out of habit a little bit, such as the nursing assessment. When I go in to assess a patient, I do it the same every single time. I know exactly how I'm going to do it. I go through it, and it doesn't take a whole lot of brain power because I do it the exact same. So that's a habit that's been very helpful as a nurse. Okay, discuss the methods of habit change in individuals. So in order to change a habit, I feel like it's really important to remember that the desire has to be greater than the reward. So we have to keep this in mind as nurse practitioners with patients about bad habits. So they know that they're bad habits, but unless the patient has the desire to change the habit, it's not going to happen. So they have to come up with a desire on their own. And they have to want to change it more than they want the reward of doing the action. So step 1 to changing a habit is determining the trigger that drives the routine. And once you've identified the trigger, you have to change the routine that follows it. So you can say, this is the trigger. I know that I would normally do this, but instead I'm going to replace it with this. Let's see. Something that's really important, I feel like, also is that you have to remind your patients that habits don't change at once. It's consistent, and it has to be done every time that it's a trigger. So you see the trigger, you have to consciously tell yourself that I'm going to do this instead of my previous routine. Let's see. Apply the concept to a patient or yourself. So a habit that I actually changed is I used to have a really bad habit of snacking on junk food when I was bored. So I kind of went a weird route with it, but my drive was that I had always had the goal to run a half marathon. So I signed up for one. It was like 6 months out. And so in order to run a half marathon, I had to run consistently every single day. And I knew that if I ate junk food and then went for a run, I was going to feel awful. So it in turn helped me to change the bad habit. So the trigger being bored, the routine. So I still allowed myself to snack, but I only snacked on healthy foods. So I just replaced the junk food with the healthy food. And then the reward is that I felt much better throughout the run, and then just in general I felt healthier. So the reward was actually so much greater than the previous reward that I ended up keeping the habit, and it's been consistent ever since then. So that is the power of habit, section 1.